Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another exciting week of Principles of Marketing. I am really glad that you're here, and I really enjoyed reading those discussion boards last week on consumer behavior. I have interjected in a few of them and have given you guys feedback, several of you already, but you'll continue to see that. Please give me around a week for turnaround time just to get those back to you. So by next Sunday, I hope that everyone will have their grades. If you have any questions about anything, as always, feel free to shoot me an email. This week, we're moving on to talk about B2B marketing, which is another one of my favorite topics in marketing, but I guess I'm a little bit biased. B2B marketing just refers to the process of buying and selling goods and services to be used in the production of other goods and services, usually for consumption by the buying organization and or for resale by wholesalers and retailers. So you're probably asking yourself, well, what does that really mean? Think about it as B2B is exactly what it sounds like, okay? Business to business marketing. So a business is usually buying or consuming something from another business, which they then intend to sell and make a profit on, okay? So it doesn't necessarily matter what the product is, but rather who is the user of the product or who's the person making the purchase, so to speak. So I will say that B2B marketing and B2B transactions in general are usually a lot more complex than your B2C transactions, and that's usually just because of all the people that are involved. So with a typical business to consumer transaction, like what we talked about last week, if you want to go and you want to buy a laptop at Best Buy, you the consumer, you just go and you purchase that laptop. It's just an exchange between the retailer and you as the individual consumer. Um, in a business to business transaction, it's a little bit different because you usually have multiple members of the buying organization. This can be the buyers themselves, a marketing team, product developers. Then you also have multiple people who are part of the selling organization as well. The sellers themselves, your research and development support team, lots of people are involved in the process. So that tends to make it more complex. And I want to give you a few examples here just to kind of illustrate this for you. Think about, you'll learn this semester that I love Amazon, and we're going to talk about that here in a few more slides down the road. But think about buying a book from Amazon, okay? So you're the consumer, you're making a purchase from Amazon, you're buying your textbook for this class. That's a business to consumer transaction. But if Amazon has already bought that textbook from another vendor, from a third party, it could be from the publisher, it could be from Chegg or whomever they purchased the book from, okay, that's a business to business transaction because Amazon is buying the book from that other business, Princess Hall or McGraw-Hill or Chugg or whoever we're talking about here. And then they intend to turn around and sell that book to you. So it's a business to business transaction, which then becomes a business to consumer transaction when they sell it to you. Um, so this is very common in today's world. I have just a couple of examples here that I want to show you, and I always find that usually I use my videos later in the lecture just to kind of keep things interesting, but here I find that with this lesson, it's usually easier to show you these things on the front end so that you can sort of develop an interest to help the lesson flow more smoothly. So I want to talk about Amazon for a little bit. And whenever you think about buying all these things online, typically, if you're an Amazon Prime consumer, in the past, you've always received a delivery from the big brown truck. UPS is bringing your items to you. So Amazon is contracted with them, and they are engaging in B2B relationships with UPS, paying them to deliver your packages. And although I'm sure they get a great deal for such a large quantity, they are still spending money having to pay those UPS people. So Amazon has turned around and created their own Prime delivery service. You can see what the truck itself looks like here. They are hiring delivery drivers and encouraging people to purchase this sort of like a franchise for the time being so that they can deliver their own packages 7 days a week, not have to use UPS or depend on them to deliver the packages. They can become more efficient this way, and they can really go through and um, deliver your packages more quickly and make some extra money. You can see the figures here just for someone who wants to invest in one of these vehicles and wants to purchase They show your startup cost being only about $10,000, but you look at your annual profit potential anywhere from $75 to $300,000 per year. That's pretty awesome when you think about it, since you're just delivering packages all day. I mean, this is a great investment opportunity for someone with a little extra cash wanting to start a business. So, anyway, Amazon is slowly navigating away from that, having to rely on UPS or the United States Postal Service, and more so investing in their own delivery trucks. Something else Amazon is doing to get away from having to pay businesses again like UPS is they're investing in drone delivery. And I have a short little video here for you. If I can find it, here we go. I have a short little video here for you that will just illustrate a lot of what they're doing. So I just want you to take a look and see this.
Amazon is developing a service to use drones to safely deliver packages to customers in 30 minutes or less. It's called Prime Air. We've started a new private trial for customers in the Cambridge area of England, and on December 7th, we completed our first delivery. Customers will choose from a selection of thousands of items tucked away in a Prime Air fulfillment center located just over the horizon from their homes. We have been operating fulfillment centers for quite a while now, but this one is unlike all the rest. These modest-looking buildings contain innovative Prime Air technology. Here's how it works. Moments after receiving the order, an electrically powered Amazon drone makes its way down an automated track and then rises into the sky with the customer's package on board. These drones are autonomous. From takeoff to landing and return, they operate completely on their own. Cruising quietly below 400 feet, carrying packages up to 5 pounds, and guided by GPS, our systems are designed to find their destinations safely. Within 30 minutes of placing the order, the customer receives their package. For this initial trial, customers can choose from the latest tech gadgets to their dog's favorite biscuits. We will use the data gathered during this beta test and the feedback provided by customers to expand the private trial to more customers over time. We're starting with 2 customers now, and in the coming months, we'll offer participation to dozens of customers living within several miles of our UK facility, and then growing to hundreds more. After that, well, it'd be easy to say, the sky's the limit. But that's not exactly true anymore, is it?
Okay, so I always like to show this video just to sort of help you develop an interest in not only Amazon, but also just in marketing in general. And it's great to see how far we've come and what we're able to do now with technology. But this drone delivery is really helping Amazon to get away from having to rely on other businesses to deliver their products, and which is pretty incredible. The last thing I want to show you, you've kind of seen the twofold coin here. Amazon is getting away from B2B transactions and becoming more self-sufficient with their drone delivery and their development of their own delivery truck, so that they can save a little money and not have to rely on others to deliver their products. But they're also, for a while, they were also selling a form of robotic technology that they used for quality improvement inside of their fulfillment centers. And I have a video about this for you as well. But now they're sort of really transitioning here to sell this technology to other companies. So they, as a business, are selling their robotic technology to other businesses who also want to be just as efficient. They eventually did change their mind and develop a patent where they would no longer sell their technology to others, because they wanted to have a sustainable competitive advantage in the workplace. But anyway, I want to take a moment just to show you how these little tiny robots work, and how they help the Amazon fulfillment centers to deliver your order even more quickly. So take a moment and watch this for me, please.
Meet Amazon's newest holiday workers, the Kiva robots. At this fulfillment center in Tracy, California, more than 3,000 of them cruise the warehouse floor, helping employees fill millions of orders.
The little orange robot goes out and picks the right pot of inventory and brings it back just at the right time for the person to pick the item out to go in that customer's shipment.
Before the Kiva robots, the workers used to walk the warehouse aisles picking up the items. But now they stay on these platforms, and the robots bring the shelves and the items directly to them. The 320-pound robots can lift up to 750 pounds. They have motion sensors to detect objects in their way and can travel between 3 and 4 miles per hour. Amazon says the robot's small footprint allows it to squeeze in 50% more inventory into this warehouse, which is the size of 59 football fields. They've also improved efficiency by 20%, so it only takes 15 minutes to fill some orders instead of 90. On Cyber Monday last year, Amazon customers ordered 426 items every second. Amazon expects that number to be bigger this Cyber Monday. The process at an Amazon fulfillment center starts when products arrive by the truckload. The items are sent up to one of the 4 floors where Kiva robots operate.
In this new generation fulfillment center, we have associates who are taking products off the carts and putting them onto the shelves that are moved by our Kiva robots.
A worker finds a space to stock the item on one of the moving shelves. It doesn't matter if there are paper towels next to board games, just as long as the robots know where to find it among the 21 million items. Then the robots wait to retrieve the item when someone places an order. From there, items are hand-picked and whisked away on miles of conveyor belts to be sorted, packed, and shipped. There's even a robot that folds the shipping boxes. While some may worry about robots taking jobs away from humans, Amazon insists that is not their intention.
You're going to see there's 4,000 people working in this building, even with all the automation that's in place here. That's because our focus on automation is about helping people do their jobs, not replacing people.
So far, 10 of the 50 Amazon fulfillment centers in the United States have integrated the Kiva robots. In Tracy, California, I'm Kara Suboy, CNET.com for CBS News.
Okay, so I hope having the opportunity to see this video and see how this works firsthand has been helpful to allow you to develop this interest in B2B marketing. And it'll kind of set the scene for what we're going to talk about for the rest of this virtual class period here. So, and we'll talk more about how the place aspect of marketing in terms of maybe purchasing online instead of in a store. We'll talk more about that in our future class periods about maybe how that does impact jobs. So I'm going to leave that portion of our lecture out for now, although it is very interesting, but I could talk for hours about that, and you guys don't want to listen to me for hours probably, so we will move on here. The first thing I want to bring up is one of your key terms for this chapter, and that is derived demand. You economics people will love this, but try not to make it too complicated. It's exactly what it sounds like. Derived demand just really talks about the link between a consumer's demand for a company's output. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's say that you need a stapler. Okay, and you're going to go to Staples or Office Max or wherever you do your business, and you're going to buy a stapler. Okay, that's a business to consumer transaction. You, the consumer, are purchasing a stapler from the business. Okay, but based on the demand for staplers at the time, the company may need to produce, Staples may need to purchase more metal from its suppliers in order to make these staplers. Okay, so that's a business to business transaction. These people are having to purchase more metal so they can make more staplers because you as the consumer want staplers. Okay, that all goes back to derived demand. It's just the link between a consumer's demand for a company's output and the company's purchase of necessary inputs to manufacture or assemble that particular output. So again, exactly what it sounds like. It's what you are demanding as the consumer that businesses have to turn around and purchase in order to make your product. So we're going to talk about today a few of these B2B markets in general. You can see there's 4 particular markets we're going to discuss, starting here with manufacturers and service providers. Your manufacturers typically buy raw materials and parts that allow them to turn around and make and market their own goods and services. So a really good example of this is the German-based company Volkswagen. They are the largest automobile manufacturer in Europe, and they own like Bentley and Bugatti and Lamborghini and all of those awesome car companies that you guys were talking about in this recent discussion post. But anyway, how they communicate with their suppliers is more of a B2B transaction, whereas when they turn around and actually sell the vehicle to you, that's a business to consumer transaction. So just want to make sure we differentiate those in our brains. That will become more important as we move on. I want to give you an opportunity to try these. So please pause your screen now take a moment and look over these, and we'll talk about the answers in just a second. So go ahead and pause for me. Okay, hopefully you had a second to think about these. So when a company like Burt's Bees buys raw materials to make their products, when they're buying all the waxes and all the natural things they put in there, I'm not sure what all's in Burt Bees, but um, when they're buying the materials they need to make their products, that's a B2B purchase. They are a business buying those materials from another business so they can make their products. But whenever they turn around and sell the products to a retailer, it's still a business-to-business transaction because a retailer is purchasing the B2B. They're purchasing the Burt's Bees product from the company, so B2B. But when the retailer turns around and sells the product to you, the consumer, that is a business to consumer transaction. Okay, so I hope you see the consumer's role in all of this. So we've talked about manufacturers and service providers. Let's talk about resellers just a little bit. These are just your middlemen, your marketing intermediaries that sell or that resell, I should say, all of these products without really changing their form at all. They're just kind of the middleman. They're just selling it and probably marking up the price. A good example here is when you think about copy machines like a Xerox machine, wholesalers and distributors will buy those Xerox machines and sell them to retailers like Staples or Office Max or whatever. But then those retailers turn around and resell those Xerox products to you, to the customer, in a business to consumer transaction. So resellers do play a part in this as well. I think this is probably the easiest one to conceptualize. It goes from the manufacturer to the reseller to you as the retailer. Okay, so this is fairly easy to think about. Again, Xerox, the manufacturer, may sell their copy machine to Staples. You will come into Staples and buy the product. So the manufacturer to the reseller was a B2B transaction, and then the reseller to you would be more of a B2C transactions. I hope you can see kind of how these fall up pretty easily. The next area we're going to talk about are institutions. This can refer from everything from a school to a museum, a church, or religious organization. And I always like to provide an example. Think about your school system. Think about where you went to high school. Okay, your school system probably has a budget allotted just for purchasing textbooks every year. And for some school systems, that's as much as $40 million to buy textbooks. And so these school systems like to take advantage of bulk discounts, obviously, and they will purchase, they may adopt all new textbooks for the math department one year and for the foreign language department the next year, and then for the science department, okay? So they're taking advantage of bulk discounts to purchase all these things at one time. And these are B2B transactions because the publisher of these textbooks, McGraw-Hill or Cengage or whoever, is partnering with these school systems who are in this form a business, an institution, and also purchasing from them, giving them a better deal, B2B transaction. Okay, and then of course our government also engages in lots of B2B transactions as well. Won't go into a lot of detail on that because it's relatively obvious. So these are the 4 types of B2B markets you need to be aware of. And I've given you all this information and we've talked about all of this so I can set you up to talk about this next area, and this is the B2B buying process. Okay, we talked about the business to consumer buying process last week, which we also call the consumer decision process, and we walked through all of those steps from need recognition all the way to post-purchase. And I want to talk to you about sort of how these two things are similar, the B2B and the B2C buying process, but also how they're different. There are a lot of differences. Usually the B2B buying process happens in writing, so it tends to be more formal, more structured, and it involves typically more people. Earlier in this video, I talked about you as the consumer wanting to go to Best Buy and purchase a laptop. It's pretty simple. You go, you purchase it, you buy that MacBook, you spend $2,000 on it, and then you have buyer's remorse. You feel terrible. Oh my gosh, I just spent so much money, right? Okay, maybe that's just me, but maybe that's how you feel. You go and you spend it and you feel bad. Now, businesses wanting to buy thousands of computers, think about a school system wanting to buy all MacBooks for their teachers and all iPads for their students or whatever. It's not quite as simple. They don't just take the company credit card and go out and purchase those, right? Not usually, at least. There's a lot more paperwork. You might have to fill out a requisition. You might need to get bids from various manufacturers, see what Dell can do for you, see what Apple can do for you, and then get approvals from 10 different people, and maybe there's a committee to vote on it. You might also not have that post-purchase cognitive dissonance or buyer's remorse that an individual would have in this process. So it's very different. The B2B buying process is very complex, but nonetheless, we still start out with need recognition. And this can happen internally or externally. Okay, so maybe someone in the university says, hey, we know that our students need iPads so they can better participate in courses. That's the need happening internally inside the organization. Or maybe it's external. Maybe a salesperson goes to a trade show, they visit a booth, they see, oh man, there's this awesome new sorting process. If we use that, we can be so much more efficient. Wow. Okay, then it happens externally to your organization. You found out about it somewhere else. Um, the most common sources for recognizing these new needs are either looking at your competition and seeing what your competition is doing. Not the best way to recognize a need, but it does happen. Salespeople, like we already said, and then suppliers are also great places to recognize these needs. So we've talked about need recognition. Let's look into the product specification. This is probably the easiest part to understand, in my opinion. When you think about product specs, no matter what you're buying, we all kind of think about the same thing. So continuing this computer example, let's assume that your university still needs new computers. They might set forth in their product specifications certain things that they will accept and others that they won't. So maybe they have a certain screen size. It doesn't have to be the largest, but it can't be the smallest. We want at least this size. If it's bigger, cool, but we want at least this size. Maybe they have a certain battery life. Well, we want these students to be able to use these computers, and we want them to be reliable. We don't want them to die after just, making a video or whatever. So we want to make sure we get a good quality battery life. Or maybe we care about the speed of the device, or how quickly it connects to the internet, or when it's going to be delivered. We set all these product specs in the details. Okay. And next, we engage in what we call the RFP. This is short for Request for Proposal, RFP. Okay, this is very common, and your extra credit assignment this week actually does relate to RFPs, and I'll give you a little more information on that extra credit assignment in my news post. But anyway, an RFP is just a really super common process where organizations will invite all these different vendors and suppliers to bid on supplying their required components. Okay, so going back to the computers, Dell may submit a bid, Apple may submit a bid, and they'll go through and see which one they want. But these really just enable the buyer to get some different pricing information from a variety of different suppliers, and it also allows the buyer to specify really what they need and allow everyone else to bid on that and try to meet their needs in the best way. So very interesting there with the RFP process. Of course, once we've written our RFP and we've gotten all that information, the university would probably meet with its board of directors, maybe a teachers union, something like that, and review all these different proposals they've received. And maybe they have a rule they have to go with the best price, or maybe they have some flexibility, whatever. But they'll evaluate all these proposals, and then they'll make a decision about which one best meets their needs. Once we've done all of this, we move to the order specification stage, and this is the fifth stage in our process. This is where you actually place your order with the supplier. Okay, so this is where you get all the super nitty-gritty details. You know exactly what goods you're getting, you know exactly how much every one is going to cost. You have a firm delivery date here rather than just a speculation. This might also be where you specify the penalties for non-compliance. So if your product arrives late, do we get a refund? If something happens, what do we do here? So if you're thinking about buying iPads, this is where you might discuss like maintenance efforts. Who's going to do the maintenance? What has to be done? Who do we call if there's a problem? If we need to replace one of these, how does that work? Is there a coverage policy, a warranty or something for that? What are all the deals? We specify all that here. And then of course at the end, we conduct what we call vendor analysis. And this is just where you essentially analyze your vendor and you decide if you're going to do future business with them. And this is pretty easy. We have this mathematical chart that we use to figure out this number, but essentially we identify what our key issues are. Okay, so in this chart I have customer service, how quickly our issues are resolved, our delivery, and then the quality of the product. You assign a weight of importance to each of these. So for customer service, we have 0.40, or it's worth 40% importance to us, whereas the quality is worth 30% and delivery is only 10%. We don't care that much if our products are a day or two late. Not a huge deal, right? But we do care that they're good quality, and that if we have an issue, we can call and talk to somebody and have good customer service. So those are all weighted. We evaluate on a scale of 1 to 5 how well our vendor did with those things. So um, for customer service, we gave our vendor a 5. That was worth 40% importance. 0.40 times 5 gives us 2. Um, so that was great. They got a really good score on that. But hey, our quality, it was worth 30% importance, 0.30, and we gave them a 3 out of 5. That only gave us 0.9 as our total. When you add all these together, you get a number out of 5. So in this case, 4.2 out of 5. And you use this number to determine whether or not you're going to purchase future products from this company, or whether you're going to go with someone else. So it's a great way to continually monitor your results. So now we've come full circle. You've seen the B2B buying process all the way from need recognition to vendor analysis. Um, what we're going to do next, we're going to talk a little bit about the buying center. Okay, and this is just fancy terminology, but this just refers to really all the people who are involved in buying decisions. Okay, and sometimes it can just be a formal role, like maybe if you're talking about a university, maybe they have a procurement department that handles all their purchasing, or maybe it's just an individual. It's different for every type of business, but the important thing to conceptualize here as we're talking about the different roles that individuals can have in the buying center is that you may have one position, like say the buyer, you may have a whole office who handles that. So it may not just be one person, it may be a group of people. Okay. Or you may have a smaller company where one person takes on multiple roles in the buying center. So it's not always cut and dry. It does depend on the type of organization you're working with, and usually the size and number of employees that that organization has to work with. So as we look at the buying center, we're going to start by talking about the initiator. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's the person who first suggests buying the product or buying the service. So they initiate the process, hence why we call them the initiator. Okay. The second individual we refer to as the influencer, and this is the person whose point of view influences other members of the buying center in making the final decision, hence why we call them the influencer. Okay, we're real creative people here, marketing people. The next person is the decider, and the decider is the person who really ultimately determines whether or not, whether to buy, what to buy, how to buy, where to buy, all of those details. They decide all of those things. So they're the decider. The buyer, we've already kind of alluded to. This is the person who just does the paperwork. Usually this is your procurement department. They have a person who handles the paperwork of the actual purchase, cuts a check, that kind of thing. The user is the person who consumes or uses the product. Again, super creative people here. And then the gatekeeper is the person who controls access to information or access to decision makers and influencers. Okay, so it's great that we have a definition of all these things, but I always think it's important to give you real world examples to help conceptualize these things. Okay, so I'm going to use the example of a doctor's office as I describe all of this to you. But let's say that you just had a snow day. We all appreciate this, right? It snows. We don't have to come to class. We can stay at home, right? Snow days are great. But let's say that you decided you wanted to go snowboarding. So, and while you were snowboarding, you had this awful accident. You fell backwards and you shattered your elbow. Oh my goodness. Oh no, you're going to have surgery. And when you have surgery, we're going to have to put these screws in your elbow. And you just got into a whole big mess. You should have just stayed on your couch and ordered things on Amazon, right? Okay. But instead, you went snowboarding and now you're injured. So you go to the hospital, you talk to your doctor, and your doctor quickly notifies the hospital that they need to schedule a time, and that doctor needs to specify what type of screw we're going to use to go into your elbow. And the average consumer may not realize all these things happen, but they really do. So The doctor in this case is the initiator. Okay, he or she determined what specific products you're going to need. In this case, what specific types of screws you're going to need to go in your elbow. Okay, so they determined this. The influencer in this case would be the screw company. So your doctor has used these elbow med screws, which are a little bit higher in price. Okay, but your doctor's used these screws for an extended period of time. She knows they're good screws. Not to mention, the salesperson came around and to her office and was, kind of sold her on the Elbow Med brand screws. So, um, in this case, the sales representative from Elbow Med, the screw company, that person is our influencer, okay, because they have influence the doctor's decision to use that particular screw in your elbow surgery. So we have the initiator of the doctor, we have the Elbow Med screw sales representative as the influencer. The decider is the hospital because even though your doctor has recommended this certain type of screw, the hospital has to decide, well, hey, I'm going to use these or I'm not going to use these. And the hospital, they put all these equipment materials out, they're ready for your surgery, but they have to decide if this is the best one or not. And turns out, with your situation, they decide that it's not only the best for patients, but it also provides this cost that is usually reimbursed by most insurance providers. They decide, yeah, the screw, that's a pretty good option. We'll go with the screw. Okay, so that's great. The buyer is usually someone who works for the hospital's materials manager, someone in their procurement department, and they go ahead and place the order. They're charged with maintaining the inventory, making sure the screws are there, paying for it, that kind of thing. So they do that. The user, of course, is you in this case. You're the one getting the screws put in your elbow because you decided not to shop on Amazon on your snow day and instead went snowboarding. Okay, just reminding you. So you're the user, you're getting the screws in your elbow, and turns out the gatekeeper in this process is your insurance company. Because remember, the gatekeeper controls access to information, and the insurance company actually thinks that the screws are too expensive and they are not going to reimburse the hospital for any of the use of these screws. So it turns out we can't use these screws because they're too expensive and our insurance isn't going to pay for them, so we have to go with a different option. Okay, so we've kind of come full circle, and I hope this helps you see all of these different roles kind of illustrated for you here. Okay, so I want to give you an opportunity to practice. So I'm going to read you these and I'm going to let you think about them and then I'll tell you the answer. Okay, so let's say we have an architect who's working for a really large firm and he requests this really specific computer software that he needs to use for his designs and for his drawings. What role would he fill in the buying center? Take a second and think about it. Okay, you're correct. In this case, the architect is most likely going to be the user. Okay, he's the person who is going to be making these designs and he needs this software to do that. But in this case, he's also the initiator because he's the person who said, hey, I'm suggesting we buy this particular software program, this product. Okay, so he's both the initiator and the user. Remember, people can fill multiple roles. Okay, try this one. So we're going to talk about Melanie. Melanie is the director of HR for a small manufacturing firm. She has a lot of interest in technology, and she's known throughout the firm as being one of the most knowledgeable individuals about new kinds of communication technology. So if the firm decides they're going to upgrade their network and they decide to do this, what role, what function would Melanie hold in the buying center? Take a moment, pause your screen, think about this. Good. Okay, if you said influencer, you're correct. In this case, Melanie is the influencer because people are going to seek her opinion and her advice about this. Because remember, she is known as being the most knowledgeable about these kind of things. So she would be the influencer. Okay, these examples continue on in the PowerPoint that I've posted online. But for the sake of time, I'm going to skip these, but you can go through and look at a few of those. One of the other things we're going to talk about today is an organization's culture. There's 4 different types of buying culture, and we're going to look at all of these individually. But I want to make sure we know what organizational culture refers to. If you've taken a management class, you probably already know this, but a firm's organizational culture talks about its values, its traditions, and its customs that usually guide employee behavior. Okay, and sometimes these are unspoken guidelines, but it's your standard operating procedure that's sort of unspoken, your culture, right? Um, so as we look at these different types of buying culture, we have your what we call the autocratic buying center, and this is where one person is the sole decision maker. They get the final say. In a democratic buying center, it's exactly what it says. Think about a democracy. Okay, the majority rules. We vote. We see who has the most votes, which option, and that's what we buy. So autocratic, one person's making the decision. Democratic, majority rules. In a consultative buying center, one person is still used to make the decision, but this person usually solicits input or consults other people before they do it, hence why we call it a consultative buying center. So your one person might make the decision, but they're consulting others, so consultative. And the last one, we have a consensus buying center, and this is where every single person must come to a collective agreement. We must all decide that we are going to buy a Samsung refrigerator. If one person thinks we should buy an LG refrigerator, not happening. We're not doing it, right? So consensus buying center. Every single person must come to a collective agreement to support a certain purchase. Okay. And the last thing I want to talk to you about are buying situations. And we have three different types. We have the new buy, the straight rebuy, and the modified rebuy. These are all big fancy words, but when you think about it, they're really not that difficult to understand. Okay, in a new buy situation, this is where you're buying something for the first time. Whoa, creative people marketers here, right? Okay, so you've never purchased from this organization before. You're purchasing for the first time. This usually does mean in terms of a B2B buying process. Remember, this is all about B2B this week. Usually with a new buy, it is a little more complicated because your organization may not have any experience with the buyer or the buying organization, so it takes a little more time. Okay, you're probably going to go through all 6 steps in the buying process, and it's probably going to take a lot of talking to a lot of different people, using a lot of individuals. It's a lot like the extended decision-making process that we talked about last week for consumers making a decision. It's a little more lengthy. Um, a good example of this is when a small college is trying to find an apparel company to sponsor its sports team. Okay, they might need to spend a little more time before they make their purchase. A modified rebuy, I think, is pretty easy to understand. This is when the buyer, you have purchased a similar product in the past from this company, but you're changing something. Okay, so we're rebuying from someone we bought from before, but we're modifying our purchase. Okay, so maybe we always order the exact same school logo. We always order the exact same shirt with the school logo. But this year, instead of buying 20 larges, we want to buy 100, okay? And instead of buying a white shirt with the logo, we want to buy a black shirt, okay? So we're changing something. Maybe we're changing the, just some specifications like that. Or maybe we don't like the quality of the shirt. Maybe it was 100% cotton and it shrunk, okay? If your dryer's like mine, when it's done with my clothes, I have to give them to my dog because I can't wear them anymore, right? So, you're wanting to change that quality level. So maybe instead of buying 100% cotton, you buy a poly cotton blend, and it's better. Okay, so you're just changing different things. Usually, your current vendors, people you're already working with, have an advantage in this case because they already have a lot of your specs down. Here, an example of this in the real world, real life would be Ohio State. Maybe they saw Michigan State's shoes and they say, "Hey, we want to change this about our shoes. We really like those shoes that we saw. We want to change this." So they're rebuying the same product, just changing a few things. And then the easiest one to conceptualize is probably the straight rebuy. This is exactly what you think. It's a lot like the consumer's habitual purchase. Okay, you always buy Dr. Pepper, you're just putting it right back in your cart. It's the same thing. You're buying the exact same thing you bought before, you're just buying more units of it, or maybe the same number of units. Okay, you always buy 500 cheap pens, and you're going to buy 500 cheap pens for your company again. you're buying the exact same thing. Maybe you're buying the same number of units, or you're just buying additional units of what's already been purchased. Okay, a lot of B2B transactions fall in this category of the straight rebuy. Another example, going back to a college sports team, maybe they need tape for athletes' ankles, or they need more weights for the weight room. They're just going to reorder what they've already ordered in the past, just a larger quantity, or maybe the same quantity as always. They're just placing another order. Okay. Um, and of course, these will change all throughout the process. Okay, as a B2B relationship changes, the type of buying process can change, and you may have to put more or less effort, change different things. So it's important to be flexible. And this is all I have for you guys this week. So hope you have a great week. If you have any questions about anything, feel free as always to shoot me an email. And I hope you guys have a great week. See you soon.